Then finally, we have Murazan's Rise nerfs have landed. This was, uh, I think, the hardest dungeon by a moderate amount, uh, based largely on the timer. And a lot of the nerfs they've landed here have been health nerfs. So shield nerf, shield size on tier, health in the tier trash area, and then damage nerfs as well to Time Lost Battlefield and Chrono Lord Deos. So
Oh, thank God, man! Like honestly,
Yeah.
these are massive changes.
yeah, do you guys think this brings this up from being like the hardest dungeon on most weeks?
Oh, hold on. Let me find a tweet from Sense. So I'll just kind of give my thoughts. I think that this key was only like a key level to a key level and a half harder than all of the other keys. Like even like Throne of the Tides and Dark Earth Thicket and stuff like that. They're also like kind of hard keys. But I think that like the big issue with Rise in general is that it's just so hard to get a run going in this key. The first 10 minutes are just so brutal to the point where we see the completion rate, even though it was done last week on a 30, right? Like it's doable at the exact same level as this Dark Heart Thicket. It's doable at the same level as this Everbloom. It's doable at the same level as this Throne of the Tides. The amount of people who are able to even get a run going in this key is so low though because of the key being so front loaded difficulty wise. And so like I think that these definitely pull it more in line, and it allows you to make more mistakes because there's a lot of situations where you come off the first boss, you come off of tier, and you're 10 minutes and 30 seconds into the key, and you're like, okay, this key's over, and then you zone out.
That's true. It is. There's so much difficulty in those first 10 minutes. I mean, you have to go crazy pulling too many bosses together in the first pull if you want to time a 30, for example. You have to pull like 3 casters in the first pull. As soon as the casters die, you need to chain in 2 or 3 more casters with more guys that melee. There's so many combos and mechanics going on because it's a Dragonflight dungeon. I'm surprised they haven't toned that down a little bit by now, but yeah, it's pretty brutal. And then you fight tier, and if you somehow manage to miss a shield by like 5 million health on the boss, for example, if you get an extra shield, that just adds an extra 30 to 40 seconds to the fight right there. And so like all those little milestones are super important to hit in the first area.
Yeah, so then we have this tweet from Sense that says, it's no surprise Rise got nerfed, but I feel if tuning is happening, then some things in Everbloom, Throne, and Darkheart could be looked at. And then he has a picture of timed 20 and up keys and timed 25 and up keys. Murazan's Rise is definitely a huge outlier. It's less than half of the average runs of the 25 and ups, and it's about half the average runs of the 20s and up. But Throne of the Tides and Everbloom are also both half of the average on the 25 and ups, although they're doing a little bit better on the 20 and ups. And Darkheart as well is a little bit underperforming as well. That's only by 25% or something, the average keystone. So I don't know. Do you guys think that this is first of all, do you think that with these nerfs, Murazan's Rise maybe gets overtaken or overtakes Everbloom or Throne in the 25 and up range going forward?
I would say it comes closer. It's still a very difficult key. They didn't address like the actual mechanics.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit easier to time now.
Yeah, and then I think all of us agree on death affixes on Lashers is a good target in Everbloom. Are there any other kind of glaring changes to make in Everbloom, Throne, or Darkheart?
Throne, the Ravagers and the Sentries, and the Ravagers and the Sentries I would probably hit a little bit. And then I would hit the one shots from the first boss and the Totem Lady dot probably.
Yeah, Throne being more popular than Everbloom is actually surprising to me because Throne has like 6 different brutally challenging areas.
I don't think that Throne's more popular than Everbloom. I think more people do Everbloom than Throne if I had to guess, but I think that it's like Everbloom's harder to complete than Throne. I think that Rise, also part of the problem with Rise is like you with the key reroll system, every single time you get a Rise, you just reroll off that shit because that's just not doable on 20 whatever, right? It's not doable at an equal level. Like if you can reroll a key, that means you timed a key at the same level, and you're not able to do Rise at an equal level to that.
Yeah, like to expand on that, when you're trying to get into the 30 ranges, or like let's say your highest key is actually 27s. You're trying to do 27s. Your highest Rise is a 25, but you can do like 27 Atal and 27 BRH. Then you're going to try to get those before Rise, and so maybe that's why it's like the last priority for people to time, which is generally true across whatever key level you're doing.
I don't know how you felt about it, but every single time we had a Rise, it was like, why do I even need to try 28 Rise whenever I already have 27? Like that key is nuclear difficulty.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit, I guess, of the King's Rest phenomenon where your key would roll into King's Rest, and it's like, oh,
Dead key.
this number doesn't, right? Like, I've timed a 27, and my key has turned into a 28 of a dungeon that I can only time on a 26, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, right? This is not good. So
Yeah, that was before key re-rolling. So like you would time a 27 and that'd be hype, right? And
Yeah.
then it'd become a King's Res and you're back down to a 25 basically because that dungeon was unable to be completed at a higher key level.
That was it was a big. You would get to the end of the week, you'd do exclamation point keys because that was back before we had detailed /key, and you'd do exclamation point keys, and 5 King's Rest would pop up in your party chat, and you'd be like, all right, see you guys next week. I think that Rise isn't that bad. I don't think it's that many levels of a disparity, especially because there was like a junkyard that season as well at the end of that expansion that was like 5 levels easier than King's Rest, but.
It's definitely not that bad.
Yeah, I do think I think it is like, I mean, obviously it's statistically a noticeable chunk harder than the others. So I do think though that these nerfs will go quite a bit towards this, right? Like in such a short dungeon timer place, 17% health on the 3 mini bosses is quite a lot, and then also like the lethality of the later bosses. I guess if you usually succeed when you get to them, and it's just a question of whether you leave the tier area with enough time. Maybe this isn't enough time. Maybe they still need to like add a minute or two to the timer as well. But I do think this will be noticeable.
I think so.
Mean, I've seen some people who are. That seems like that got like a key level easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'd say so
too.
too.
Seems like it's a lot more in line. Like a part of it too is like it's really hard to practice that key. Like it's just like. The hardest part of Dark Heart, I think it's 15 minutes into the key. The hardest part of Rise is the first pull, right? It's like, okay.
Well, I mean, that makes it, in a sense, that makes it easy to practice.
You can't practice it, right?
Yeah, so you can practice the hard part a lot, but you run into the situation, and we see this with MDI teams sometimes, where the start of the dungeon is very well practiced, and they haven't got a lot of experience at the end of the dungeon, because, like, you've done 500 pulls of the first pull, and only 30 of them have made it to the end of the dungeon, right? And so you just don't have a lot of experience actually at the end of the dungeon. It's definitely something that can happen on Murazan's Rise. You can see this is one of those spots where you can kind of see the difference between the groups that will play it out and will just finish it out the dungeon versus the ones that don't, and then end up sometimes throwing the end of the dungeon.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.